Thank you, BIFHSGO, for inviting me to give this workshop. And thank you to all the participants for coming to this workshop on this Saturday. The focus will be on locating the land records for our ancestors who resided in the rural areas of Ontario. For those residing in the towns and cities, it is a bit more of a challenge, and we'd probably add another hour or so to this workshop. I might be doing another one just on this towns and cities in the future. That I'm not too sure about yet. What I will be covering is, first, finding where our ancestors lived using various records. Second, using the concession and lot details, find them in a historical abstract and parcel books on land. Finally, we head over to Family Search to see if we can find them in the land books on that site. There will, between each part, there will be time to sort of do your practical and then follow up with questions and answers. Just one key thing though. I'm a researcher, just like yourself. So I don't know what is going on in Ontario concerning the closing on the land record offices beyond what is being sent out in the Ontario Ancestors e-weekly updates newsletter. Throughout this workshop, I will be using my fourth great grandfather, Alexander Fraser, and he arrived in 1816 in Lanark County as part of the Perth military settlement. He passed away in 1862. So for after 1862, Luke McMullen, my third great grandfather, will be used as an example. He arrived in Lanark County around 1840. And actually that's based on the land records. In this, our first part of the workshop, Find the Land, we will look at the various resources that we can use to find the concession and lot where our ancestors lived. What resources are there for us? Even more importantly, in these times when visiting an archive or library can be challenging, what resources can we find online? So, on with part one. My usual first place to start to locate the family on the ground is via the census enumerations. The population schedules for the decennial census enumerations from 1851 to 1921 have mostly survived. However, only the 1851-52, the 1861, the 1871, and 1901 enumerations have location schedules that have survived, and those will help us put our families on the ground. The dates beside each year on your screen is when the census started. So if they arrived after 13 January 1861, and they arrived maybe February 1861, they probably aren't on that census. Just as importantly, not all sub-districts have survived. If you can't find your ancestor in the census, check the districts and the sub-districts listing on the Library and Archives Canada site for that year. The records for the sub-district they were possibly living in may have been lost to the ravages of time. For example, if you have a family residing in Lambton County for the 1851-52 census, you're almost out of luck since almost none of those census records have survived. Finding the location recorded in each enumeration varies. So I'm going to go through each one. For the 1851-52 census, and I keep saying this 1851-52, well, it was supposed to start in 1851. However, it actually didn't start until January 1852. So for that census, you first need to find the family on the ground, so to speak, to make sure you have the right head of household. For these examples for the census, I'm using Ancestry. I'm using Ancestry for my searching just because it's easier with their search facilities. They do all kinds of little magic with the names to hopefully help you. Here, I've just entered in the first and last names and the location, Lanark, Ontario, Canada, as the place where I knew they lived in. Yes, on the screen, the Jean, Jeans, and Taser are actually Fraser, but the handwriting is a bit challenging, so the index transcriptions originally are way off. So I submitted corrections to Ancestry. They were accepted, so they also show up as being indexed under the Fraser name. Through my research, I know that my Alexander Fraser isn't the Esquire. That Alexander Fraser had the occupation of Colonel Fraser in the census, and he was a colonel in the Lanark militia. Of course, this has led to much confusion in the research of my family by others, and I'm still working to straighten out some of the military record issues. My Alexander Fraser is the Alexander Trazer in this transcription. And here they are. It is also sometimes useful to know who the neighbors are to make sure you're looking at the right family in the agricultural schedule. In this case, the neighbors are John Hunter and Evan Griffith. Here I am doing the next part of the search, and it's just a normal search on Ancestry in the 1851 census. I sort of had a cheat here to find my Alexander Fraser in the agricultural schedule by using the last name of Jeans. Again, it's a problem with the transcription. Yes, I have sent in the request for an update. I only did that about a week ago, so I expect it'll be a little bit longer before it's fixed up. To see only the agricultural schedule results, add the word agricultural to the keyword search box and have it be an exact match. That first Alexander Jeans, that's the one I want. And when I view in, he is with John Hunter listed before him and Evan Griffith after. So I'm pretty sure I have the right one. We also now know where he is on the ground. He resides 2W12. Or translated to something understandable for us, the second concession, west half of lot 12. You can also see that the east half, Evan Griffith is on that land. Since the subdistrict name is also the township name in this case, I also know that the township is Drummond in Lanark County. For the 1861 census, we are going to follow the same process. I'm searching for Alexander Fraser in Lanark, Ontario, Canada. You might notice that some of the returned results don't have the birth details and state all places agricultural. These are the agricultural schedules. But again, we need to make sure we have the right family by looking at the population schedule. This time there's no clue as to which Alexander Fraser is mine. Even the years are close for the two born about 1794, which are the two possible candidates. After looking at both of the entries and knowing the family members, I found the right one. And look, there is John Hunter as a neighbor, but looks like Evan Griffiths wasn't enumerated next. We could change our search to filter on the exact keyword agricultural, but since the agricultural schedules stand out, I don't really need to. But we need to look at the two possible candidates. The first one on your screen has the letters ESQR for Esquire after his name. And the neighbors don't match what we expect. So I think we can rule him out. But the second one has John Hunter and Evan Griffiths as neighbors. No Charles like it was shown before in the population schedule, but the John Hunter, Alexander Fraser, and, well, with the 1851 census, well, we knew Evan Griffith was on the nearby land. This time, it only states concession 2, lot 12. If we didn't have the 1851 census, then the land records might shed some light on who owns what on that lot. But again, we can see that Evan Griffiths is on the same lot and concession. So they own parts of that piece of property. 1871 census, well, Alexander Fraser is deceased now. So I'm going to be looking for my third great-grandfather, Luke McMullen, again, living in Lanark, Ontario County, Canada. And when I just do a search on his name and that county, you can see his residence was in Elmsley North Subdistrict of the Lanark South District. Here he is with his family. Notice that we are looking at Schedule 1, the nominal return of the living, otherwise known as the population schedule. The 1871 census is unusual in that all 9 schedules have survived and were microfilmed. The schedule we want to look at is Schedule 4, the return of cultivated land, of field products, and of plants and fruits, commonly referred to as the agricultural schedule. By the way, for the 1871 census, Schedule 2 is the nominal return of the deaths within the last 12 months. So if you can't find an Ontario civil death registration for someone who died between April 1870 and April 1871, you just might find them listed in Schedule 2. And that's available online on Ancestry. To get to the other schedules, we need to move through the images using the left and right arrows on the screen until we get to Schedule 4. But first, we need to record a few things down. You see, unlike the 1851-52 and the 1861 schedules, the 1871 tracks the people by the page and line number they are found on the population schedule. So for Luke, he is found on page 45, line 1 in Subdistrict C, Elmsley North. By moving through the images using the right button, in the case of Elmsley North, it was about 22 images before getting to the start of the population schedule. But the number of images to click through really depends on the size of the subdistrict. Notice that the first column doesn't have a name, but a page and line number from the population schedule. Now we just need to find the entry for page 45, line 1. A few more clicks, and a few more pages later, here is the entry for his land. There's all kinds of interesting details about wheat growing, root crops such as potatoes and turnips, hay crops, and the plants and fruits like apples or pounds of maple sugar. But at least now, what we are interested in is the land where they are located. Zooming in, we can see that the land is found on concession 7, lot 27, and he owns the property with 175 acres occupied, 130 acres improved, 20 acres in pasture. Above all that, we can see that lot 28 in concession 6 is empty because it has an E in that column. It could also state T for tenant. So the person on that land did not own the land themselves. For the 1901 census, we have Schedule 1 for the population schedule, and Schedule 2 has the buildings and lands, churches, and schools. 1901 census, very similar to the 1871 census, where you first find the family in the population schedule, write down the page and line the head of household is on. Once again, I'm looking for Luke McMullen, and I found him still in Elmsley North sub-district of the Lanark South District. He is living with his daughter Lydia and son-in-law Louis Darrow. We need to record the page number, 2 in this case, and the line number of the head of household, 42. Remember, it isn't the family number we need to record, but the line number on the page. Just like with the 1871 census, we need to move through the images until we get to Schedule 2 and the right page with the information for page 2, line 42. Luke is now residing in the household on concession 8 in North Elmsley, lots 3, 4, and 6. I didn't clip the image and it sort of missed out the acreage column, but those lots, that's 684 acres owned by Louis Darrow. We also have county directories. And for Ontario, I always head over to the Ancestor Hunt. In addition to the listings for free online directories, there are newspapers and yearbooks, in addition to links to other freely available sites. This is just a listing for Lanark County. Some places have many more, others, well, not so much. Don't forget to check the local libraries and archives for online copies also. The directories also vary in terms of content. Those United Counties of Lanark and Renfrew directories are actually farmer almanacs. However, the counties of Lanark, of Carleton, Lanark, etc. from the 1884 directory is an actual directory with people listed. Again, we can see that Luke McMullen is on concession 7, lot 27. We also learned his post office was in Perth. That can be sometimes useful in the newspapers because they will sometimes list in the local newspaper people have mail waiting for them. So knowing where he was at this time, you might be able to then check out possibly the Perth Courier. On Ancestry, there's the Ontario Canada Voters List 1867-1900 collection. The coverage is spotty as to what has survived, but you may get lucky. Here's the first page of the list of voters for the township of West Oxford in 1876. The BF for the concession stands for Broken Front. You can also find voter lists on the Canadiana site, hosted by the Canadian Research Knowledge Network. In my searching, I was able to actually find over 1,000 individual entries in the Canadiana catalog for various places and times. When I was doing the searching, I used the subject of voting registers. And in this example, the place Goderich. After a bit of playing around, I was also able to use the various filters such as to not include results from the individual issues and searching only monographs to focus in on these voters' lists. Maps are another fabulous resource. The Canadian County Atlas Digital Project has digitized the maps from the Illustrated Historical Atlas books for Ontario. However, only a few names can actually be found on these maps. Here's an example for North Elmsley. I've added the star to indicate where Luke McMullen resides, but there's no name listed on that property. Other maps? The Norman B. Leventhal Map Center collection. Wonderful collection of maps, but they only have a few maps of interest to us for this presentation. And these maps, they primarily cover only the eastern part of Ontario. They were created in the 1860s, and unlike the illustrated historical maps, almost all the lots have names in them. Here's the map for Lanark and Renfrew, but don't strain your eyes trying to read the names. When you click on a map, a new window opens up and you can zoom in. And here it is zoomed in on portion of North Elmsley. Again, I put a star on the lot where Luke McMullen resided in 1863. And the map actually says L. McMullen. Another collection is the Ontario Historical County Maps Project, which has maps for other parts of Ontario. You can click on a county that sort of looks like there's a map colored in to display a pop-up menu with a link to view or download the scanned images to your computer. Don't forget about wills and estate files for clues. Here are two abstracts from the will of my Alexander Fraser. The top one has Alexander leaving the west half of Lot 12 in the second concession of the Township of Drummond to his son John, the same lot we had found for Alexander in the 1851-52 census and the 1861 census. But the second part unveils a surprise. Alexander also had land in the Township of South Sherbrooke in Lanark County that he left to his son Thomas. Until I did the presentation, getting all prepared, I never clued in to these additional lots of land that Alexander owned. Now, these wills are not available online, unfortunately. Before COVID hit, I actually had ordered the microfilms and viewed the microfilms from the Archives of Ontario. There's some other resources. Civil birth, marriage, and death registrations can sometimes have the place of the event or where the informant listed. Don't forget about doing a Google search using the name of the county and township along with the word map to see what appears. In my case, it was Drummond Township, Lanark, and I came across this Come Celebrate 200 Years event from Lanark County Tourism. It has a searchable database and even shows the locations using present-day Google Maps. And when I clicked on the Alexander Fraser entry, this is what popped up. It's Alexander's original land grant for concession 2, but it's lot 16, northeast half. Yep, another set of records I might need to chase down. And then there's the Library and Archives Canada Land Records Database. It might also shed some light as to where the family originally settled. And it's also a free resource. So I know it's a lot to take in, but see if you can find a relative that resided in rural Ontario from the 1901 or earlier censuses using some of the sources I've mentioned.
So we're going to start in with the question and answer period. If you have a question, please type it in the chat, direct it to questions, go down and find in the selection list of participants, the questions, and send me a question. We have some already, Ken. Someone asks, is there a repository for lands confiscated during the War of 1812? Their ancestor was a trader apparently, and his lands were confiscated.
I haven't looked into that myself. That's a really good question. Tip, Typically, I would actually do my resource. I'm usually about 30 seconds ahead of everybody when answering questions, and a lot of times it's a Google search. So try the keywords Ontario or Upper Canada confiscated lands. So I do a Google search for Upper Canada confiscated lands and actually see what shows up.
Okay, that's great. When a lot and concession have been turned into a subdivision, how do we find the new location? That may be part of your next
That
session.
is actually the problem.
Okay.
I've actually been trying to work through some parcels of land for Ottawa, just trying to find an easy way to figure it out. And so far, I've been spinning my wheels and having challenges.
Okay. Next question, is 1871 census the only one with an agricultural schedule surviving?
No, the 61 census also had it. And also for the 1851-52. It's just that the 1871 census actually had all 9 schedules survived today.
Okay. Are there any suggestions for land maps pre-1800 for loyalists, ancestors?
I'd actually refer you to the local societies, whether it's genealogical or actually the historical societies. Um, I know for Niagara region, I came across a web page on early settlers for Niagara. And sometimes you will find the maps there. A lot of these maps have not been digitized or put online yet. So they're actually held within those libraries and archives.
Okay, a couple more. When we go to the, oh, this is popping around here. When we go to the county's map you referred to in the historical map, the historical maps appear on a U of T website, but when we zoom into a specific area, the website shuts off. Do you know why this happens?
No, I don't. So let's just see. Ontario Digital Maps Project. That's that one. That's that one. Ontario, there it is. So do okay. And let's look at Huron. With seems to be working fine for me. Just grabbed one for Huron, which really allows you to zoom right in.
Okay.
So I don't know if the problem's on their end or not.
Okay. Well, we'll have to keep working at that one. What does it mean if you find your ancestor in the 1901 census and the page and line don't show in Schedule 2?
That means they probably did not own the land.
Okay.
Or they might have just been missed being copied into that schedule.
Okay. Could you just go over once again how to get to the other schedules for each census? Is that possible? Or should we wait to the end for that, maybe?
Oh, let's see what miracles I can do.
Okay, because then we have to start part 2 soon.
Yep. So do this quickly. Let me minimize that. I just got to get to the beginning of that. Okay, so for the 1851-52 census, and let's see if we do this. Let's be brave and do this live. So I'm on Ancestry, and what you can do is under Search, Card Catalog. And if you've never used the card catalog, it's a wonderful feature. And I'm just going to say I want census, and I want the 1851. search. And there's the 1851 census of Canada East, Canada West, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Click on that, and I can then type in Alexander Fraser. I don't want it exact. And where he lived in is Lanark, Ontario, Canada. I can just do a search. Brings up the various ones. And of course, these all have corrections against them. Say, hey, here's the possible other name. If I just wanted the agricultural in the keywords, assuming I spell agricultural right, I'll be fine. Make that exact and search. And it brings up the different ones. And I can sort of focus it a little bit more on the areas I want. And it finds different ones. That's for the 51. The same rules apply for the 1861.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. And we have time for one more question. Barb, I think you have one?
Are there townships maps for Ontario back as far as 1842?
Maybe. But again, it's actually a lot of those have not been scanned in, digitized, and put online. A lot of times it will be surveyor maps, things like that, that are held at the local historical archives.
Okay. That's great. Thanks. That's all the time we have for questions right now, so we can get on to part 2. If we didn't get to your question, there will be time at the end of the workshop.